Hi, my name is Tammy,
And I'm Jen.
and they call us Woo. Hello, everyone. We are going to talk about something fun that maybe not everybody has heard of today, and that's Akashic Records, which is something that I heard about pretty recently, actually, maybe within the last 5 years.
Really?
Absolutely, that is not a normal thing people know.
Oh, we're starting off on a good note. Jen's oblivious like normal.
It's not oblivious. You are so in it that I think it's easy to forget. It's kind of like, when people start out like doing comedy or something and they haven't hit it big yet and they have all these like super relatable jokes and stuff, and then they get really rich and their jokes aren't relatable anymore to some people because they're like, you're living in a different world now. I don't understand that world. Like Kevin Hart. I still think Kevin Hart is hilarious, but sometimes his stuff is not quite the same as in the beginning. Anyway, on that note, so Akashic Records, I really don't know much about. And for those who are listening, that's Akashic, Akashic Records. So we're going to actually have Jen talk a little bit more and explain what that is and go from there.
Of course. I'm excited. I've known about the Akashic records for at least 10 years, probably more than that. Um, the Akashic records are actually a compilation of every record through every lifetime through all of history. So my experience with the Akashic records, I can actually go in while I'm in session and read through or have people's guides give me information from the books of everybody's life. So if I was working with you, Tammy, we could go in and we actually go into essentially a meditative state. This is how I do it. This might not be how everybody does it, but go into a meditative state and I will go in and ask the keeper of your records. So in my experience, everybody has a keeper of their records. There's somebody who stands in this library that's all of your books of every lifetime you've had. Um, and they'll actually come in and which book would you like to check out
This is a
today?
super
Pretty
great
much.
visual in my
Like
head.
so usually when I walk in, there's a big giant building and I walk up the steps into this building and I walk down a hallway and there are doors. This is in the energetic plane, so non-physical. Um, and I walk down the hallway until I find the door that says your name on the door. And when I walk in, there's usually a desk there, and there's a person, whoever your keeper of the records is, standing there. And they say, "What are you looking for today?" And I tell them, "We are looking for the trauma that occurred that is creating this issue in their life, or we're looking for XYZ situation, or something that would help this person move forward in this moment." And the keeper of the records is going to pull out their big book ladder, climb up the ladder, grab whatever book it is that they need to bring down to me. They lay it out on the table and they say, "Okay, here." I have had moments where there are things in those records that it is not my job to look at, and it is not my
Mm,
job to share with the person who's on my table or that
mm,
I'm working with.
okay.
Um, that is for somebody else to share with them, or that is for them to find out themselves. Sometimes there will be future reference or reference that they're not ready to deal with yet. And at that point, when I get to it in the book, the record keeper usually goes and closes the book and
Okay.
says, "Time's up. You're not to look at that. You're not to disclose that at this time."
Okay. So you
Um,
can't even see it in that sense. It's not just something that you read and you're like, oh, I can't share this. You know
nope.
very clearly that you're not supposed to see that.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
The usually whoever their keeper is, it's a spiritual being who's there to help them with their ascension process, their higher development process.
Hmm.
Um, and they know um what's going on with your life. They're the one who's tracking all of those books, making sure that
Hmm.
everything is placed so that you can recall that information when you need to. or have somebody assist you in recalling that information.
How do you
Um,
get that job, man? Like, I have this great picture in my head of like, when I was a kid, I used to love the library and Beauty and the Beast, like those
mhm.
huge walls of books. I've always thought that that was the coolest thing ever.
Yep, that's what it's
How do you
like.
get that job of like just being
I
able to
don't
be the
know.
keeper of records and
I
like be
don't
able to
know.
help people that way? That's so cool.
But now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if my grandma is now an Akashic records keeper. She was a librarian. Like,
Oh, they're like,
and
this
so,
totally fits.
yes. So now I'm like, I wonder if my grandma's keeping records now. Like, that would be super sweet. I don't
So
know. I'll
I
have to
know this
ask
is
that.
like in a different realm, so these are all visuals,
Hmm.
of what's happening or what you can see, so you
Yep.
understand. So every person has their own record, but you said
Hmm.
it's everything, like everything that every person has ever done.
Yep.
Okay.
So everything that has happened in history is recorded in these books. Everything that has happened in every lifetime somebody has had is recorded in these books. Every being has their own set of Akashic records. And then there are historical records that come into play as well. So there's a lot of things that people are going to have overlapping in their books. So giant events that have happened, like wars that have happened, any type of major trauma that's happened, that's going to appear in a lot of people's books.
Okay.
Um, and from my experience, because I can only speak from my experience, there are also historical books that will talk about um, different types of trauma that have happened throughout history. And those types of traumas will be categorized. So there might be things like there can be 20 different books that are all on the same event, but they might be categorized differently. So there might be pandemic traumas or there might be war traumas, and those things will show up in a historical book around that specific trauma.
Okay.
Um, for record to see like what things have happened, what things have been created in the human experience. Um, I don't typically go to those records as often as I would go to people's personal records because those things are also going to be documented in somebody's personal records if there is something that they were learning from that process, if there's something that um, was specific for them. I mean, essentially, there are times where I've opened a book and instead of reading the actual document, they will just show me a video. So it will be like a
Okay.
movie is playing in front of me of everything that happened in this section of their life. And then instead of closing the book, they will hit pause and say, "You're done for today." Um, so it depends on the information that you're requesting when you go in there. You can be very specific, you can be very vague. Um, but most of the time when I'm going into somebody's records, um, well, I will say most of the time if somebody's records come in, I'm not specifically requesting it to begin with. It's,
Mm.
hey, there's a record for this.
Okay.
Come check this record. So it's like my clients' guides are coming in and telling me, hey, there's a record that you need to look at for this.
Okay.
Um, um, I will say there's a lot of people who are, I don't, a lot is a relative term, I guess. There's people in our industry that are trained in doing Akashic record readings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of people who do Akashic record reading also do past life regression.
Mm.
Um, so those two things can go hand in hand. Um, the difference, and this is one thing that people have asked me in the past, what is the difference between past life regression and reading your Akashic records? And while you will get some of the same information, the Akashic records is specifically somebody going in and reading those documents or seeing the movie play out. Like they're getting the specific information that is needed. They're not getting like the emotional retelling of
Mm.
anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's very like this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. It's very factual. It's very like it would almost be like scientific based. It's like they're just telling you the facts. If you're doing a past life regression and somebody's going in to get a past life regression, they're actually being put into a meditative state, into a state of hypnosis, and they're recalling the information from a past life on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the person who's regressing them and helping them to get to that state where they can remember for themselves.
Sure.
So it's active participation rather than passive
Mm-hmm.
participation, and more emotionally based than factual based.
That makes
Um,
a lot of sense. Our hypnotist friend Angie is going to be doing some specific trainings to get more into the past life regression
Yay.
piece of it. Which I did do regressions with her. It wasn't in a past life, it was this life. Um, but speaking from experience with those regressions, that makes sense because you really are, like your conscious and your subconscious is working at the same time. So you really are observing and also experiencing that whole thing over again, as much as your subconscious is playing through it. So it's not passive at all. You're in it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and from a healing standpoint, some people find that it's more healing when they actually go into that state and they are recalling the information themselves. Um, so there's benefit of either. There's
Mm-hmm.
benefit of having somebody read your records, and there's benefit of doing a regression. Typically, when somebody comes in and they're talking to me about emotional trauma that they've experienced in this lifetime, and they're feeling like there is a draw to the past, specifically about the trauma that they're dealing with now, I will tell them that it might be beneficial for them to actually do a regression rather than just looking at the records. Because if you're having an emotional response and I go in and I read your records and I'm like, oh yeah, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, and I'm super, super like factual and not looking at the emotions of it, sometimes it can be more triggering because it's
Mm.
just like somebody just telling you, oh yeah, all this really crappy stuff happened, but that's okay. Like
Yeah.
it was just in your book. Um, Whereas when you actually walk through the past life pieces of it, it might
Mm-hmm.
not even be a trauma point. It could be something that happened that is just a remembering for your body. So then when there was a trauma, it was also remembering something that happened from the past.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I shouldn't say body, like your emotional body, your physical, your spiritual body is remembering. Your physical body is not because your physical body was not there. Um, but so sometimes when people are doing that type of work, it makes more sense for them to actually go back and experience the emotions of that time so that they're not misremembering. Um,
Okay.
because it's really easy when you've been removed from a situation for a long period of time to forget what the full circumstances were. Um, and so there might be a triggering point for you that you remember, but you might not remember what was before that or what was right after that. And those might be key pieces in your healing.
Mm.
So, sometimes experiencing that is really important,
Mm-hmm.
um, so that people can move forward.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me. I have a teacher that I know who I wish she was my history teacher. She was an elementary school history teacher for years. And history, when you just read a book, can be dry, especially if you're a very
Yeah.
emotional person, because if you don't have that emotional connection to it, it doesn't matter as much to you. And so she would do all these fun things, like she did this whole day with these other teachers where she brought in all these Civil War reenactors and kids could walk through. It was like a whole village where they had to experience everything and stuff like that. And that made a difference to those kids. Those kids remembered that because they were
I
experiencing it
want
versus
that.
just reading, right? I
Who
know.
is this teacher? Can we go take the
She's
class now? I'm not
retired.
an elementary kid, but
Unfortunately, she is not in the business anymore, but I can understand how that would make a difference. There's certainly, when it's about you, you're still going to have that attachment to someone reading the records, but maybe not the same as like experiencing something that was in a life that doesn't feel the same as the one you have now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, and sometimes,
interestingly enough, when I was doing my regressions with Angie, I had the distinct feeling because she said sometimes people will just go in, go further back
hmm
because that's where they need to go, regardless if that's where she's immediately leading them.
hmm
Because she doesn't really lead as that's the wrong way to put it. She doesn't really lead as much as she asks questions when you're in hypnosis to be able to attach a feeling to the a different time that you experience it. So she doesn't really lead you anywhere. She follows you and guides you.
Yep.
But that being said, I remember getting the distinct feeling that what I was doing now was the most important thing. Like I didn't need to go back further, but I still
hmm
have a curiosity about it. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I feel this thing that, I like this burning thing that just needs to be addressed that I know happened in a previous life. It's more just like, I think everyone's maybe a little curious,
hmm
especially if your belief system is new to this idea of having different lives and
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, and so I talk about the emotional piece of that, but sometimes if people do know that their trauma is stemming from another lifetime, sometimes they do just need to know, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what happened? What happened so that I know that I'm safe and I'm not in the same situation here? And if they don't feel emotionally drawn or they don't feel like they need to experience it, sometimes going into the Akashic records and just saying, okay, this is what it says, this happened, this happened, this happened, and this happened. And some people, that's all that they need. Like,
Okay.
okay, I just needed to know that, and now I can move forward. And it really depends on what the triggers are and what trauma is going on. If you feel like it's a consistent pattern in your
Mm-hmm.
life, sometimes pulling out the records makes more sense because you can look at multiple different lifetimes and see where that pattern was in all those lifetimes. Whereas when you're doing a full regression, sometimes it's harder to go back to multiple different lifetimes because it might take you a while to get to the meditative state to bring you into that full reality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then to pull you out of that and then bring you into another one.
Sure.
Sometimes you can only get to one or two in a
Mm-hmm.
regression. Whereas if you're reading the Akashic records, it's like, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened, and you have that bookkeeper who's right there saying, hey, like, or record keeper, I should say, not bookkeeper. He's not doing any finances, none of
I didn't even
that.
notice
It's
that.
I, he keeps your books, but he keeps your records in your books. Or she, whoever. Um, but they know like what you need. So they might bring out five different books and say, okay, this page, this page, this page, and this page. Like they'll be very specific. They'll open the books to the correct pages and everything for you.
Cool.
Um, depending on who's reading them for you and who's going in their connection.
So, how do you learn a skill like that? I know other people who say, they can read Akashic records. How? How do you learn that skill?
Yeah. So there are training programs. I mean, you could go on Udemy and find a training program for that. You could go to different schools that do metaphysics and get a training program for that. There's a lot of people who do train it. Um, Really, it is being very in tune with yourself and knowing how to get yourself to a relaxed state of being and create the openness. I'm not going to close my eyes because I can feel myself going there right now. I'm like, nope, that's not what you're doing, Jen. Um, but it's allowing yourself to get into that space where you're completely open and you're ready to receive psychic information.
Okay.
So it's more of a meditative practice. Um, Most people who are channeling Akashic records, they are doing a meditation at the beginning or right before they see a client, to get themselves in that ready space to
Okay.
receive. And then there is visualization that goes along with that. You visualize yourself walking up to the library of the records. You visualize yourself walking in. So it's whatever you feel comfortable with to bring you to that meditative state where
Hmm.
you're open, and then allowing yourself to visualize going into that record hall. Once you
Okay.
get to that record hall, if you are open, you are going to receive the information. Um,
So, can people learn how to do this? This is a two-parter, so I don't forget the
mhm.
other question. Can people learn how to do this just for themselves? One, and two, how did you learn about the Akashic records and how to
Hmm.
read them
It's funny
or
because
how to
when
connect?
when we started talking about the Akashic records, when I was like, "Oh, we could talk about Akashic records," I was like, "When did I first know about the records?" And I had this memory come up for me. You can do it yourself. You can read your own records. Sometimes you will block out information because you don't want to hear the answer.
Okay.
Um, so just like anything, like sometimes you'll block yourself from receiving the information because you're like, I don't know that I want to hear that. Um, but I was thinking about it and I was like, I remember a time when I was probably 7 years old, and I remember a being coming into my room and talking to me about where I'd been before.
Hmm.
And like, I have a very clear image right now of standing there reading this book that talked about the different planets that I had lived on in other lifetimes. And I
So you're
remember
saying you're an alien? I'm
most
just
of
kidding.
us
I'm
have
just
lived
kidding.
off
I
planet.
I know it's a whole story for another day.
Most of us have lived off planet and have other lifetimes in other
Hmm.
places. Um, but I do remember very clearly reading about other lifetimes in other places. And as a little kid, I was obsessed with the fact that I was an alien when I was a kid. I like my cousin and
Oh
I don't
my
know what
god.
it was. There was there was a show that was on after Bob Ross. Is that the right name? The guy with the
The
hair?
painter? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. There was a show that was on like right after that when I was a kid. And for whatever reason, this guy drew alien cities.
Mm.
And my cousin and I used to sit down and we would draw all of these alien cities. I actually just found one of the images the other day, like what we drew. And it's hysterical. I'll have to show it one day. Um, but I knew as a child, and forgive me if I've told our listeners this before, and you've probably heard this before. I used to sit on the school bus and I would stare longingly out the window at the sky because I wanted everyone to know that I wanted to go home. Like, for whatever reason, I thought everybody would understand that I just wanted to go back to my home planet. Like, and I thought everybody would get that just from me
Okay.
staring out the window as a child.
So I feel like we would have been really good friends as children because
Yeah.
that reminded me, and I have no idea where I came up with this or why, but do you remember the show Elf?
My favorite show.
Okay, for some reason, I started telling my family that I was Elf's sister and that I was gonna go, that he was gonna come, like, hang out with me. We were gonna go back to his planet or whatever. And
Uh-huh.
I have no idea why I said that. And I thought it was funny, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like, I wasn't saying it as a joke. I just was like, oh, that was kind of funny to think about that.
Yeah.
But I still to this day have no idea why I said that or why I thought that was even like anything, especially because, like, I mean, for those of you who didn't grow up in that generation, Elf was not attractive. He was a weird looking little puppet guy, but he was funny for the time, right? And yeah, for whatever reason, I was just like, I'm Elf's sister, and I just started calling myself that.
So I have an elf doll
Oh
that
my
I
god.
just found the other day, and I'm like,
That's
is it
great.
somewhere close to me that I could grab it? I don't have it close to me. I think it's
That
back
is
in my
great.
storage, but I will bring that out for the day that we do talk about extraterrestrials and whatever. That
For
will be
any
in
of
my
our Gen Z listeners, Alf. It's ALF, and it
Mhm.
was a show in the 90s,
Which stands
80s.
for alien life form, just so you all
Yes.
know.
Yes. Um, Super cheesy, but since the 90s are back in now, if you can find it on YouTube, you'll have to go look it up.
Just a warning, he liked to eat cats, so he was always
Correct.
chasing cats.
We
I
never
don't think
saw it
they,
on the
no,
screen,
no,
but
thank goodness.
yes. Yeah.
But that was, yeah.
That
Um,
is really funny though. Like I really think we would have gotten along really well.
hey, maybe we lived off planet together at some
Maybe
point.
we did.
Maybe I'll have to talk to you about that someday.
Mm, that's a good conversation.
Yeah, but so those are the interesting things that you can learn, like from your Akashic records. You can learn where you've been before. You can learn like who, actually, you can learn about a lot of the people who are in your soul group. So it will make mention of other people. So I've done sessions with people where they're struggling with somebody who's in their lifetime now. Like if it's a sibling or somebody else, sometimes they'll come in and be like, I'm really struggling with this person. I don't know what the deal is. Like, I just cannot deal with this person. And sometimes it's like, hey, there's like 73 different triggers in all these other lifetimes with
Hmm.
this specific soul. And so we can walk through that. We can talk about the patterning and what your soul contracts are and how you are meant to function with that other being,
I'm
that
writing
other
down
person.
soul contracts because that's another one that
Oh,
I think we should talk about another time.
yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Just high level, what a soul contract is, because that might actually be kind of something for people to know. It's things that we have agreed to with other souls to help us learn and grow going forward.
Hmm.
So soul contracts are definitely in your Akashic records, and it can be very, very beneficial when you start looking at those contracts and see like, okay, like we haven't completed these. Sometimes the keepers of the records will just tell me, oh, they have 3 soul contracts that have not been completed in this lifetime yet. Um, oh, they have a contract with somebody for this specific service, like something that they were meant to do together.
Hmm.
Um, which can be helpful because sometimes people are in conflict with somebody for a really long time and they don't recognize that they've completed their soul contract, that they've completed the tasks that they were meant to complete with that person. And so they're hanging on to this relationship with this other
Oh,
person
okay.
because they think that there's something big that they need to complete there, not
Hmm.
recognizing, oh, I already checked that box.
Well, maybe even unknowingly, right? Because there's
Yes.
a lot of relationships that I think we've all experienced that have run their course, but we are not willing to see that yet or
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that letting go of that doesn't mean that it didn't offer something to our lives at one point.
Yep.
Not everyone is meant to be there forever with us,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. Yeah. So you can look at those things. Like if there is somebody in your life that you've struggled to release, sometimes it is there was multiple contracts or there was a contract that needed to be fulfilled.
Okay.
And once you've fulfilled it, one person might step back and the other person's going, wait, 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 where are you going? I'm so used to you being here
Hmm.
and not recognizing that that contract's complete. So then you
Okay.
can finally separate. Um, and that can be friends, that can be family, that can be whoever. Um, actually, it can be contracts with specific items as well,
Mm.
like um items or beliefs. So a lot of the time people will have a contract in place that they're going to hold a certain belief or they're going to continue a certain pattern for so many cycles until they can learn from that or so
Mm.
that they can experience that.
Okay.
Really, it's more about the experience, but you do learn something from every experience that you have. And so they'll hold on to those beliefs or they'll hold on to those specific things.
Hmm.
Um, and then when the contract's over, again, if they don't recognize that the contract is done and they've completed those cycles, they've completed the karmic cycle, um, they'll just hang on until they're told, "Hey, you can let go now. You're free. The jail door cell is open. Like just walk out."
So this
Um,
brings up a couple more questions for me.
mhm,
One, so then would you say it's probably better if you're really looking for information to have someone else read your Akashic records because there's less likely to block out information that you might filter out when you're trying to do it yourself?
mhm.
And what was the other thing I was saying? Thinking, had it something to do with souls? Oh, yeah. And then that brought up the thought of how, the term old souls, like the people who just seem like they have a whole different level of wisdom or knowing
Mhm.
from a very young age. So is it possible that some of those people are just at a much higher stage of learning through their different reiterations into the universe, and there just really is, maybe even a parent with a young soul and a kid with an old soul that's just
Mhm.
they're going through the different processes at that point?
Yep.
I know those are two
So,
very unrelated questions, sorry.
yes, they are. So I'm going to try to remember, but I did write down um what came in when you were asking about reading your own records is know thyself, young grasshopper. Like, um, if you don't know that you can remove yourself emotionally from whatever you read, then I would say do not read your own.
Okay.
Um, because even though things are just written very factually, we are human beings who are going to read these records. And we oftentimes have human responses. Um, we are going there in an energetic form. Our soul is stepping into that space, but we're bringing that information back to our human body. And so when you're doing this work yourself, you are standing in both of those places. You are going there from a divine soul level, but you're carrying it back and doing all of the work yourself. So if you don't believe that you can not emotionally react to the information as you're reading it, um, because it's going to be an immediate thing where your soul is telling you exactly what's happening in that moment, um, then I would say have somebody else read it that can read the information, gather the information, and then deliver the information to you so that you only have one job to do. You
Okay.
don't have to read and research and do all of that. Like your brain is going to feel like you're researching it, because you are reading through a lot of stuff. Like have those be two separate things. If you're somebody who is like, I just really want the information and like this is exciting for me, and you might be ready to do it on your own. And some people naturally do it. Like for me, when something comes up for me, sometimes my guides will just come in and say, Jen, there's some records that we want you to read. And so, like, they'll just lay the book down in front of me and I'll get the information that I need. I've been doing that since I was a kid, not recognizing that that's what it was, but that's just a natural progression for me because of my experience with the spirit realm. Like, and I know that if my guides are coming to me and saying, hey, there's some information for you, I can handle doing that on my own. There are times where my guides will come in and say, hey, there's some information you need. And I will have a very visceral reaction to them telling me that I need some information. I'm like, I do not need you to tell me anything. If I'm having that response, I am not in a place to go back and read my own records. And then I will reach out to somebody and say, hey, I need you to help me pull in this information.
Okay.
Um, so know thyself. Um, the second question was, now I don't
That was
remember.
about old souls
Oh,
and
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm.
So Old Soul, Young Soul is very much about your records and about how many lifetimes you have been here and the experience that you have gained. Um, so when somebody is a young soul, typically they will make more what we would see as mistakes.
Okay.
They will be doing things like doing a lot of drugs, drinking a whole lot,
Hmm.
like a lot of those things that we wouldn't do if we knew the outcomes and what happens.
Hmm.
Like when we make those choices, it's because we don't have a way to cope with them otherwise, cope with whatever's going on in our life otherwise, or we haven't experienced it and we want to experience it.
Hmm.
So typically, not always, but typically, young souls are going to be the ones who are making more mistakes when they come in to a human form. Um, Old souls have been around the block a lot. They've had a lot of experience in different lifetimes. They've had the opportunity to already go and drink themselves silly and go to every party and drive like an idiot and do do all of these
Hmm.
things that are really detrimental to their human vessel, like things that could really, really hurt them. They've already gotten those things out of the way. And now they're like, okay, I learned from that. I know what that's like. Now I can move forward and I can learn something else and I can experience something else and I can help other people walk through that.
Sure.
So it's really just, it really is just about the experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have um young souls who learn very quickly. Um I don't see it very often, but every once in a while I'll see somebody who makes a lot of perceived mistakes in this lifetime and all of a sudden they have this great wisdom about them.
Mm.
And there's two different trains of thought on that. Sometimes people just are really, really quick learners. Other times you have walk-ins, which is where one soul steps out of the body and another soul steps in. So like there's multiple experiences being had in the same human vessel by different souls.
Wow.
Um, that is also something that can show up in
Well,
your
geez, we need to
Akashic
talk about that
records.
later.
Yes.
That is news to me.
Yes. I'm trying really hard not to go off on a tangent about that because there are so many cool things about like walk-in
We
stuff.
will come back
But
to that for
yes.
sure.
Yes. Okay, good.
So I'm curious if our listeners have that same kind of sense that I do. 'Cause sometimes I feel like there's things, as I'm sure you do, Jen, that you just think are kind of common experiences that other people have, and they're not necessarily. So I
Oh,
feel
I've
like
never had that.
So I feel like it's pretty easy to identify in some people a young soul versus an old soul. And when you were describing this whole, kind of childish nature or whatever, I could think of a perfect example of actually a mother and daughter. And the mother, I feel like, has a very young soul and
Mhm.
very, very, very impulsive, very unfortunately, also it came out in the forms of abuse and stuff like that too, but very like prone to throwing tantrums, just things that you
Yep.
relate to childish behavior, very sometimes, selfish, like wanting things for themselves, which is all things that, kids learn to navigate their way through as they get older.
Yep.
Every kid has those moments where like, but I want this to be my thing. You can't have this thing.
Yep.
Versus the daughter, who I feel like has wisdom way beyond her years, where reasoning through things is easier for
Mhm.
her to just explain, like, hey, this is maybe not the right path because of blah, blah, blah. And, oh, yeah, sure. Where the mom would be like, I'm not listening to you. You can't make me. And it's super interesting to think about that, especially in the terms of, parental relationships, because I imagine that probably happens more than we would think. And some of the really
Yes.
conflicted things that are happening between some kids, especially kids who make their way out of abusive situations and
Mhm.
understand the negativity that's coming from that,
Yeah.
just seem to have a different they're just on a little bit different wavelength, if that makes sense. So now I'm
Yeah.
curious, do other people notice that stuff too, or are they having like a
Mhm.
light bulb moment where they're like, oh man, I know a lot of people that could fit into? I
Yeah.
don't know if it's something that
Oh,
other people
I'm sitting
notice.
here going, yeah, of course people notice that, Tammy. No, I
Well, you know,
I don't know.
I
I
don't
noticed
know.
that.
Yeah. And it was really interesting to think of when you're talking about soul contracts. I would really like to revisit when we talk again about being attached to certain items or belief systems too. And I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, I try not to go off on a tangent too, so
Yeah.
we don't end up with a 2-hour episode where we talk about all the things.
We're good at that.
So, if somebody wanted to learn how to read Akashic records, is there specific, because I know you said you could find it in a lot of different places, and of course we want to trust our intuition, but for people who are kind of new to this and are unsure about trusting their intuition, is there specific places that you would suggest or people you would suggest someone would seek out
Um,
in order to be able to do that? Or maybe even finding someone who reads the records? I don't know.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say people can certainly reach out to me if they have questions on that. But as far as specific people or specific places, I always use my intuition for that. Everybody resonates with somebody different. I know when I was doubting my ability to read records, I was like, I need to get training. I need to get certified on this. So I went online and I was searching through different online courses and I found this person that I felt really, really drawn to. And I was like, oh, I'm going to take this course from this guy. And I started taking the course and I started reading through all of the comments, and people are like, this guy is BS and blah, blah, blah. I'm like saying all these mean things. And I'm like, he's doing an awesome job. And I recognized while I was listening to him that he was conveying information energetically to the people who were learning from him. Like he was just embodying the energy and he was imparting his knowledge through the energy that was being carried through this course. And if people weren't taking the time to tap into the energy, I don't know that everybody would have felt that. So they would have just been like, oh, he's just giving me stuff I already know. But if you were listening to the rest of the energetic information that was coming in, if you were receiving the downloads of information, you're receiving more.
Okay.
So that is one example of like just making sure that you feel comfortable with the person who is training it. There's people all over the United States, there's people all over the world that train this. Um, there are there's information from Edgar Casey. Some people say Case. I say Casey. I might be wrong. Each their own. Um, but he has done research on this, so there's probably trainings and stuff tied to him and his research as well. Um, but I can look and see if there's some links that I would recommend.
Okay. Maybe that's
But
something that we
really,
can add to a little bit of information we can add to the show description if people are
yep,
curious.
yep, of course, of course. Um, Tammy, have you had experiences with having your records read at all?
No.
Never?
No, as a matter of fact, I want to say the first time I'd even heard about them was, I think it was you. And then there was, there's a few other people I know that either read them or have talked about them, but my knowledge was pretty limited
Yeah.
on that in general. But I mean, it would
Wow.
be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, in the sessions, because I know you've done some work with me before. I don't know. Have you ever been led to any type of record?
I don't know that I've read your records. Like
Okay.
I don't know that that's
Because
come up.
you didn't bring it up
I
when we
would
were
have brought it
talking.
up. If it would have come up, I would have brought that up.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm curious. I just, kind of like I said before, I get the really distinct impression that what I'm doing in this lifetime is super important. So I tend to focus a lot on what's happening right now. And that could be also part of me being like a very earth symbol grounded type of person that tends to like to think about now. I mean, I like to plan and stuff, but also I like to be in the present. Now, that being said, I'm curious about stuff in the past, but I've never been super drawn to, like, I need to know.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that means I just don't have a specific thing that I need to address at this point. I mean, it certainly
Yeah.
could change, where as I'm working through some of this stuff, it could be like, all right, now let's work on this other stuff too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I have a question for you, Tammy,
mhm.
and I have a question for our listeners. So, if you were to close your eyes and picture what your record haul looks like, what would it look like?
Oh my goodness. So there is a beautiful, well, unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore, but there was a very beautiful library in downtown St. Paul, Minnesota,
Mhm.
that was, I believe it was some type of reference library at some point, but
Mhm.
kind of like what I was saying about like the Beauty and the Beast movie. You walked in and it was just this huge, like gorgeous, tall ceiling space with, like big columns and stuff. And then along the outside of the room, it was two or three levels high
Mhm.
with just this like wrought iron like catwalk
Yeah.
around each of the levels. And then each of them of course had all the books on the shelves or whatever, and it had all these like beautiful wrought island like ladders and walkways, and then in the center of the room there was all the tables and stuff like that, and it was just like, yeah, it was just gorgeous. And that's kind of what I think
Wow.
of is like these really big, like you said, with the ladders and stuff, multi-level rooms that I mean, I love reading and I always have, so I think that's part of what enthralled me with that movie when I was young too,
Yeah.
was just access to all of those books at any time, but then even just being in the room would feel so nice, like so calming. I've always loved libraries too, though. I
Yeah.
probably should have been a librarian. I thought about it at one point. But anyway, that
Well,
is
when
kind
you
of what I
cross
picture.
over, you're going to be one of those record keepers.
I should probably look at more libraries because I've encountered some really beautiful old buildings like that before, and I feel like they're kind of going away because we have so much information on the internet now.
Mhm.
There's certainly still, I'm sure, gorgeous libraries out there, and I would love to visit the Library of Congress and some of the other just huge, reference libraries and stuff.
Yeah.
I was actually watching kind of a cool show. It's this new show about Swedish death cleaning, which
Mhm.
is a whole other thing. So it's just in a nutshell, it's basically like this practice of going through all of your things while you're still healthy, and all that stuff, so nobody else has to go through all your stuff after you're gone. So it's a
Oh, okay.
conversation about, at some point we're all going to die,
Not at
and
all what I thought you were going to say.
it's just about like embracing the things that you really want around you and value versus the things that you can let go of, that
Okay.
so someone else doesn't, it's not someone else's problem at some point.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this last episode that I watched, there was this woman who lives in Kansas City, and she and her partner were part of this really cool thing that called Woman Town. So that was like back in the day when, being out as, a homosexual person was very challenging for people. Also, it was that time when if a woman wanted a loan, they were generally like, okay, well, bring in your husband. It was still, we have to remember that in the 70s, still women couldn't even get credit cards on their own. So she was kind of part of this whole movement with this other group of lesbian women who basically ended up banding together, and they bought buildings, homes that needed to be restored in this specific area,
Mhm.
and they just kind of worked to make sure each of they could all have home ownership and they could all be together, and it was really cool. But anyway, so there is like a reference library in Kansas City that is the history. It's basically like gay history. It's a lot of cool things that have happened, and they didn't have a whole lot of records for that.
Yeah.
So part of her releasing things is she had a lot of different pictures and stuff like that really wasn't being honored properly. You know, it was just in like piles and boxes. So she donated a lot of stuff to them. And they had this, it was a really beautiful moment in there too, but they had this really cool system. The organizer lady on the show was just like in heaven when she walked in there, and everything was just so nicely organized. But they had this like arm thing that came out, and it would pull like the whole shelf and pick exactly the right box for the things that, you know, you wanted to put in it. So he had all of these like mass amount of shelves and like boxes with all this different, you know, historical memorabilia in it. But it was organized like so precisely. It was pretty cool. So when you were talking about pulling records and stuff, I could imagine just like a little, well, not a little person, but a guy being like, boop, 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 and drink stuff in, and like the little arm comes up and hands them that
I mean, some
box.
people's record keepers are little. I mean, not all of them are giant. Like, some of them are giant, some of them are little, some of them are different beings. Like, they're all
That's
over
pretty
the
cool.
place. Yeah.
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 I don't even remember if that answered your question anymore. I'm sorry.
I was
I went
asking you
off on a
what your
tangent.
library would be
Yes.
look like,
Mine
and I
is
really
old
want
and
to know.
grand.
Mine is too. Mine
Yes.
has like a marble table in the middle, and yeah, it's beautiful. But there's also plants. There's lots of plants in my
Ooh,
library.
nice.
Um, what I really would like to experience at some point is I want to go into somebody's library and have there only be one book.
Oh,
Like, I want to
that's
meet
like
the
a
person who
brand
has
new soul.
super, super new soul. Like, I want to see that library. Like, I've never experienced that, and that's something I would like to experience.
Maybe if there are people who are experiencing a lot of the more childlike things in life, they are not the people who would actually be looking for their Akashic records, and that way that's why you haven't encountered them.
I
Because they
know.
don't know better yet.
I know, and I can't, I would not ever just go into somebody's Akashic records without permission, but good gosh, I just want to see it. Because I want to see, okay, so if I go in there, if their library is just going to be a little teeny tiny little room that just has the one book in it, or if it's still going to be this massive library that just has one book on the shelf waiting for all the rest of the books to fill their
Oh,
shelves. Like, that's what I want to know. Like,
well, if I encounter anybody who I'm like, I'm pretty sure you need your records read so Jen can see if you're this new, I will let them know.
hey, everybody, if Tammy tells you you need to get your records read, now you know she thinks you're
I
childish.
think you are a childish little punk. No, just kidding. Anyway.
On
Well,
that
thank you for
note,
explaining all of that because it is super interesting information. And I'm
of
really
course.
looking forward to branching off to some of the other stuff we wanted to talk about too, with soul contracts and walk ins
Oh,
and stuff.
yeah.
So,
Well, thank you for letting me talk about it. I forget how much stuff is in my brain and what I've experienced until you ask me questions, and I'm like, oh, let me tell you about this.
yeah,
So, thank you.
absolutely. Well, thanks again, everybody. Please, of course, let us know anything that you want to hear about in the future in the comments. And we'd love to hear more about your rooms. And maybe
Yes.
if you also can identify these new souls and old souls easily, or if it's something you're just learning to do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Bye, everybody. Super glad
Bye.
to see you here today. Thanks everybody for listening. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe and check the show description for the links to the show. We would love to hear your thoughts below on this episode, as well as anything that you'd like us to talk about on future episodes. Remember, everybody, you are unique just the way you are, and that is why they call us Woo.
Mm-hmm.